Hello, I'm Mayor Rick Goldring, and welcome to Burlington Matters. This is the third season of Burlington Matters, and it's great to be back in the Your TV studio for another season. Burlington Matters is a program that features discussion with a number of different people on a number of different issues and events that are occurring within the city of Burlington. There is nothing more significant being discussed in the city of Burlington these days than the future development of the city. And we're going to talk about the future of development within the downtown of the city of Burlington. But I do want to introduce my guests that are with me today. To my immediate left is the Director of Planning and Building for the city of Burlington, Mary Lou Tanner. And to my far left is Rosa Bustamante. And Rosa is the Manager of Policy for Mobility Hubs in the city of Burlington. So development is the focus in Burlington. Everybody I talk to, I get questions about development, as you do, and that's the world that you're living in. Has there ever been a more intense time of development and planning and official plan work and all the bailiwick of issues that we're discussing than there is now in your career, recognizing you have a longer career than Rosa, Mary Lou?
There never has been. What we're dealing with everything from changes to provincial plans that came into effect in July of this year, to wrapping up our new official plan, to our investment in mobility hub planning, and then a number of significant development applications. There is a lot going on, and we are asking a lot of ourselves, of the community, of council, and even of the development industry in working through all of these issues.
So what are the factors? What are the influences that are pointing us in a certain direction?
So we've made a decision that we're going to grow, but grow within the Burlington context. The city, half the city is rural and agricultural, and that is not going to change in this official plan or the work that Rosa and her team are doing. And we want to protect that half of the city. It matters. Part of it's in the Niagara Escarpment Plan area. We share the values of committing to protecting the escarpment and escarpment lands. We support the Greenbelt Plan and protecting Greenbelt lands. So it means that we have the other half of the city that is traditionally more urban. We've reached the limits of traditional greenfield development. Alton Community and what we call Evergreen, which is around Dundas and Tremaine, are our last what we call greenfield development neighborhoods, which are traditional subdivisions, traditional, single family, semis, some townhouses. We're coming to the end of that. There's probably about 600 or 700 of those types of units left to be built in that type of development. So we're done with that. We won't expand our urban boundary because it's a values-based decision that half the city is going to be rural. So we need to look at how and where we're going to grow. And we know growth is coming because Ontario is growing. Ontario's growth is largely driven by immigration. Burlington is a highly attractive community, and we see people wanting to invest in the community and build a different form of housing. There are some smaller infill developments of townhouses and things like that, but largely what we're going to see is higher buildings, whether it's a mid-rise, which is 4 to 11 stories, or a taller building, which is 12 and above. So we need to define where we're comfortable with that happening, how much, and at what scale.
And really, we've done that, and now we're getting in place the new official plan that we hope to have approved by the end of the year. And just big picture, as far as the key components of the official plan, can you just remind us where we're at, where we're focusing growth?
Sure. So in addition, half the city is in what we call the urban area. 34% of the city in total is traditional neighborhoods, parks, green space. That is going to see very little change. There'll be small infill projects, what we call gentle intensification, but by and large, we're making a strong commitment to those neighborhoods, that they are important to us, they provide housing for residents, and we see them going forward as remaining in that form of housing. 11% of the city is going to be jobs. So 5% of the city is where we're going to see growth, and that's largely going to be around the 3 GO stations, Aldershot, Burlington, and Appleby, and in downtown Burlington. There's an area of the city that we call Uptown, which is Appleby Line, Upper Middle Road towards Dundas, and that was identified a number of years ago for more intense development, and we see that now with some towers and some of the commercial development and some businesses. And then along the Plains Fairview corridor and Brant Street, that's where we will see growth.
So Rosa, over to you. So you're the manager of policy for Mobility Hubs, and your career is probably a little more than a decade. You're young in your career. How do you look at this opportunity you have to help shape the future of the city of Burlington?
This is a very exciting opportunity. When I was in school, a lot of planning was focused around subdivision and greenfield development and how people would lay out houses and lots and streets. And now in the GTA, we're finding that as cities reach build out, we're actually doing master planning or secondary planning in existing built up areas. So it really is a new approach in the GTA, and it's really exciting for planners to be working on these types of activities and working around existing conditions to figure out what that needs to look like in the future.
What are the advantages to a traditionally suburban community like Burlington transitioning to being more urban? What's the big benefit to all of us, the changes that we're going to see?
Yeah, so I think the exciting opportunity for Burlington is really that by concentrating our future people and jobs around the mobility hubs, we can take advantage of the increased transit service. We can create complete neighborhoods. We can provide a range of amenities in one location. So somebody could do their shopping, they could go to a coffee shop and meet a friend, they could walk their dog, they could drop their child off at a nearby daycare. And rather than having to get in their car and drive for every single trip, those amenities and services would be located closer to them so that it's all within reach, within ideally a 10 to 15 minute walk or bicycle ride.
So recognize we have a very attractive downtown right now, and the vast majority of people that I talk to, and when I ask, so what do you like living about downtown? Invariably the answer is because you can walk everywhere. I guess it's safe to say we want to continue that obviously in downtown Burlington, but not only in downtown, it's the areas around our 3 GO stations as well.
That's correct.
So let's talk about downtown. You're responsible for coming up with the mobility hub plans around Aldershot, Appleby, and Burlington GO, as well as our downtown. And downtown has been the near-term focus of you and your team. Tell us about the engagement that you've done with the community and how you've approached it, and tell us about where we are in the process.
Sure. So we kicked off the work for the downtown in the spring, in April, and we had a launch party at our Mobility Hubs office in downtown Burlington. Then we had a series of visioning workshops and open houses for people to come and tell us what they like about downtown and what they'd like to see in the future. And we know that the traditional, the traditional style of open house doesn't work for everybody. So we also engage them through Facebook posts, through tweets, through online surveys, and we also decided to try something new for the city, which was hosting coffee shop consultations. So we would go to a variety of downtown coffee shops and we'd make ourselves available for several hours so that we could have a dialogue with people who wanted to come in and sit down and tell us their story, tell us why they moved to Burlington or why they moved to the downtown core. And we could have a very rich dialogue across many different formats.
So there's obviously a range of perspectives. So what have you heard? What are some of the different views that you've heard?
Yeah, we've heard a lot. I would say the main things we've heard coming out of the public consultation over the past 6 months has been the public wants us to protect and preserve the character of Brant Street, that retail feel, the facades that have a new storefront every so often, and the pedestrian scaled buildings. We've heard that they want us to protect views to the water. They'd like to be able to see the lake from different corridors looking south. They want us to respect the existing neighborhoods, so the St. Luke's and Emerald neighborhoods that are on the east and west sides of the downtown. They don't want to see change there. They want those to be stable areas for families in the future. And they'd also like us to concentrate the tallest and most dense buildings towards the north end of the downtown, so closer to Brant and Ghent, where people could easily walk to the Burlington GO station and get on the highway. And there's an opportunity there to have more affordable units and also to have units within walking distance of the transit station.
If we look at what this plan could look like in the next 20 or 25 years, what do you see the major benefits for existing residents?
I think the exciting opportunity is, more retail opportunities, more offices, more people, supporting the vibrancy downtown, more feet on the street, and creating a very urban community where people don't have to use their car as often and where they can access more things that they need on a daily basis in their downtown core.
And we already had a precinct plan in the downtown that was derived, I guess, about 11, 12 years ago, and you're proposing a new precinct. The precinct that we have on the screen right now is the downtown core. Can you describe what that represents?
Sure. So this is an area in the downtown that we've looked at where we see an opportunity for some new tall buildings to be built into this area.
Why tall buildings? I'm going to stop you right there. I mean, we hear this. So why tall buildings?
Well, when we look at the entire downtown, we have to provide a variety of building forms. So as I mentioned, there are several precincts where we're planning to keep the existing built form or keep low-rise and mid-rise. And there are other precincts where we think it's appropriate to introduce some height so that we can provide a range of housing choices for people and a range of price points for people. And we're also looking at tall buildings in this area specifically because we'd like to secure some more office uses. So one of the things we've heard is that if we allow taller buildings here, we could look at a requirement where there must be, for example, a minimum of 2 floors of office in that building. And so that would help us achieve some of the additional jobs we'd like to see downtown.
So in the downtown core precinct, which is the area from John over to Martha, we lost the map, but it's John over to Martha and I believe south of Caroline. So the new policy, we're projecting that we will say if you want to have a certain amount of height and density, you're going to have to give us some office space.
That's what we're looking at right now, yes.
But at this stage, in the official plan that we're planning to pass this year, will there be anything definitive describing that or mandating that in the official plan, or does that come later in the zoning bylaw?
That's something we can include in the official plan. We're still looking into the policies, so we haven't finalized them yet, but that may be something council will see when the official plan comes forward.
And there are already some taller buildings in that downtown core precinct.
There are several tall buildings already, both at the north end of that precinct and all the way down to the south end. There's buildings ranging from 15, 16, 17, and 18 stories there.
Okay, we're halfway through the program. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back talking about planning in the downtown of the city of Burlington with our Director of Planning, Mary Lou Tanner, and our Manager of Policy for Mobility Hubs, Rosa Bustamante. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Burlington Matters. I'm Mayor Rick Goldring, and today we are talking about development in the downtown with the Director of Planning and Building for the City of Burlington, Mary Lou Tanner, and the Manager of Policy for Mobility Hubs, and Rosa Bustamante. Recently, Mary Lou, I heard you talking about our downtown area, or the urban growth center of our downtown, where we anticipate to see more growth. But really, it's only a small percentage of downtown we're going to see significant change in going forward. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So what we call the Urban Growth Center downtown Burlington is about 105 hectares, which is about 225 acres, maybe 230 acres in total. Just slightly under half, or 49%, is going to be parks and public spaces and public buildings. So Spencer Smith Park, we are proposing new parks in downtown Burlington, street connections, recognizing the significant public presence of City Hall, the Performing Arts Center, the Art Gallery. So that's a big, big factor, and that is an important part of downtown in maintaining and enhancing that public piece of it. 40% is going to be existing neighborhoods, what we call St. Luke's and Emerald, which are the shoulder neighborhoods on either side of downtown, as well as the new Bates precinct, which is Locust Street. And then 11% of downtown will be where growth will occur and where change will occur. But even within some of those that area of 11%, there's already development that has occurred that we don't really see a lot of change happening. So it's a very, very small percent of the overall downtown picture that will see change.
Great. So we talked about the downtown core precinct. One of the things that we heard from residents is the protecting the feel and ambiance of Brant Street. And how are we going to do that? Rosa, sorry.
So we've created a new precinct for Brant Street. We're calling it the Brant Main Street Precinct. And in that area, we're proposing to have a 3-story building height maximum facing Brant Street with the ability to terrace or step the building back to Locust and John Streets. So all of the height will be pushed away from Brant, and that will allow for sky view and sunlight and that scale, that pedestrian scale that people experience when they walk along the street. We think that Brant Street has the opportunity in the future to be what we call a flex street, so a street that could be closed down seasonally for festivals and events. And so it's really important for pedestrians to experience that ambiance that you mentioned, and we think that the built form sculpted that way will achieve that.
And one of the areas along Brant Street that is under review that you're going to be providing a recommendation in your report is the corner of James and Brant, which you're suggesting some more taller buildings can go there.
That's correct. We have looked at that intersection as an opportunity for some additional height. We think that it's a very important gateway into the civic node of the city. And so we're proposing a policy where some taller buildings may be permitted there, as long as views to the Cenotaph, City Hall, and Civic Square are maintained, and as long as a very high degree of architectural excellence is achieved there.
So we passed earlier this year, we passed the tall building guidelines. Can you give us some background as far as the benefit of having tall building guidelines? What are we going to get now that we have tall building guidelines?
So previously, tall buildings would often be a big slab that would just rise straight up. And now with the tall building guidelines, we have requirements for podiums and step backs.
What's a podium?
Oh, sorry. The podium is the bottom part of the building, so the part that's closest to the people on the sidewalk that they experience. And after 2 or 3 stories, the tower form is kind of centered within that. And so the actual height is concentrated into the center of the building. So when you're on the sidewalk, you don't experience the building. And the height doesn't have as much of an impact in terms of the shadow or the presence of the facade to the pedestrian.
And I want to talk about the Cannery Precinct, which isn't very big. It's a very small component of the downtown. Tell us about that and where it's located.
Right, so the Cannery Precinct are basically 2 blocks in the downtown. One is the area that has the Bridgewater site, the building that's currently under construction on Lakeshore Road. You can see on the map in the gray box. And the other block is the block between Brant and John Street at Lakeshore Road. And we think that there's an opportunity in these 2 areas to have landmark buildings, provided that there's access to the water and enhanced public realm. So Bridgewater's under development. We know that we're going to have public access on the south side of that development. But for the other block that has yet to be developed, we're planning to have an enhanced widened sidewalk as you come down Brant Street, so that the views to the pier and the water are enhanced for the pedestrian.
And then you've also mentioned the Upper Brant Precinct, generally talking about sort of pushing more height and more density up closer to the Burlington GO station. Tell us about that.
So in the Upper Brant Precinct, there's a lot of larger blocks that we don't have in the downtown. The parcel fabric is bigger, so there's more room to accommodate tall buildings that won't have the impacts to adjacent properties. And so we're looking at proposing building heights up to 25 stories in that area. And we also know anecdotally that the sales price per square foot decreases the further you move from the lake. So the types of unit prices you see close to the water are generally higher than ones that you see 500 meters or a kilometer north from the water. So there's an opportunity to get some larger units that might be at a price point that are affordable to new residents.
So recognizing that 11% of the downtown area is where we're focusing with regard to change and having new development in those particular areas, it will bring more people, it will bring more jobs to the downtown. And a big concern that we have, many residents have, is the whole issue of traffic and transportation. I know I certainly raised this in meetings that we've had, and I've raised this at the workshop that we had a couple weeks ago, where you and other staff presented. So, we're trying to come up with an answer about how we're going to address traffic and transportation. And I'm not sure if there is one yet, but let's talk about it. Let's try to craft an answer as best we can. If there's going to be another 3,000 or 4,000 people and jobs in the downtown, or 5,000 or 6,000, the conclusion is that'll generate more traffic. How do we deal with that?
So
and Mary Lou can jump in. I'll give Rosa a break and let Mary Lou respond.
So I think it's important to go back to something that Rosa said and that we consistently heard from people is they really want us to protect the character of Brant Street. And one of the things that we need to do in protecting that character is not widen it. But there are things that we can do. So we've had a transportation analysis done, and we know if every property develops the way our plan shows it, that there's going to be some areas of the downtown that we're going to have to make some adjustments in. So we can do things like change the signal timing at an intersection. We can move the turn lanes to give people a little bit more flexibility. But we need to go what I call further upstream and go actually into the developments And as we're dealing with developments, we need to ensure that we are supporting active transportation, walking, cycling, transit, and that the developers are partners with us. So in all new developments in the city, particularly mid-rise and tall buildings, we require bicycle parking. We want to make it easy for people to have a bike in a condo. We require developers to provide car share, community car share, and not just a parking spot, but a vehicle in the parking spot. And we require them to give purchasers a Presto Pass for a defined period of time so that it makes transit easier. Downtown is highly walkable. There's a transit center there. And what we are hearing from people, and particularly on development files, is if there's car share, if I can store my bike, then I'm willing to give up my second car, and I may even give up both vehicles. Not everybody's going to ride a bike, but what we are seeing is the public is actually, I would say they're somewhat ahead of us on these issues, because they realize that if we really want to protect the ambience and the character and feel of downtown Burlington, widening roads is not an option. So we need to look at transit. We need to talk about making the streets more walkable, making cycling safer for all, because there's a commitment to downtown schools. We want kids to be able to walk and cycle to school, and we want to give people choices in how they move around the city.
I look at how much I walk in downtown because I work downtown. My office isn't downtown. I can walk to my lawyer's office. I can walk to my accountant. I can walk to get my hair cut. I walk for lunch. I can walk to meetings at the art gallery, the hospital, the senior center, all in close proximity. But if you live downtown, I mean, you walk even more to all the different amenities, the Performing Arts Center, art gallery, and so on and so forth. So it's quite possible that as time goes on, there's more and more services and more retail in the downtown. And we do improve transit, so you can go to the GO station every 10 or 15 minutes. So we have that much frequency. That you can hop on Burlington Transit to go to stores or appointments wherever you need to go, and there's good frequency to go there. That ultimately, it is quite conceivable that people can live in the downtown, as you mentioned, and not need a car. Mm-hmm. If you have the car share, that you can go to your big grocery shop at Fortino's or Costco, wherever you're going to go, or Walmart. You can use the car share program once or twice a week or once or twice a month, whatever your requirements are. And you can use transit and walk to places the other time. It is quite conceivable that the ratio of car ownership can decline.
Absolutely. And part of this plan, and I think it's something that we've paid particular attention to, is making sure we've identified priority streets so we have a really, really good cycling network. We have a really good environment for people to walk and they feel safe. And even, our tall building guidelines, we require a minimum of 6 meters from the curb to the face of the building. So it widens out that area for pedestrians to walk and feel safe. And those are really important things to do. My office is in City Hall as well, and I routinely see kids and parents riding up the sidewalk on Locust Street to get to school. And we need to do better. We need to make cycling safe for all, and we need to have these routes where we're really going to pay attention to how the street functions for cyclists.
So recognizing that transportation and transit are not your bailiwick per se, but you're certainly involved as the Director of Planning, where are we at with regard to planning for more transit and planning for more cycling in the city?
So we're doing a fair bit of work in both fronts. Jarrett Walker is working with us on our transit master plan. He's done a couple of workshops with council, and in the first 6 months of next year we'll be talking with the community about options for transit, and he's presented us 3 different scenarios. One is essentially the status quo, and then there's one that moves the transit routes to more focus on ridership, sort of with some coverage. So ridership is where you have higher density uses and more frequency. Think of Plains, Fairview, Brant Street, that type of thing. And coverage is going into neighborhoods. And then there's a third option that takes it even more to a ridership network. So 90% of the network would be focused on ridership. So we need to talk with the community, and particularly transit users, about these options so council can make some decisions in mid next year about transit. As part of the work we're doing with our transit plan, we're updating our cycling master plan so that we can align it with all of the work we've done in the official plan and the work that Rosa and her team are doing in the 3 GO stations in downtown Burlington.
Rosa, question for you. If we're sitting together, we're doing this show 3 years from now, in October 2020, what has to have happened in the city? Let's talk about downtown, since that's our focus right now. What has to have happened in the downtown for you to feel that we've made real progress?
For me, I would like to see a number of things. I would like to see an investment in transit. I'd like to see more frequent transit network throughout the downtown, connecting the downtown to other destinations in the city. I'd like to see new units at a variety of price points, bringing in a wide range of demographics into the downtown. Families, young people, people from different backgrounds coming in and supporting our community. I'd like to see more office buildings. I'd like to see more jobs where people could actually live downtown and work downtown. And maybe only one person in a family has to commute, or maybe even both have jobs downtown. And I'd like to see enhanced public spaces and parkettes, and whether it's urban plazas or pocket parks, but opportunities for people to have green space and access to the outdoor as the development is happening around us.
Is that possible in 3 years?
Some of it is. Some of it might take longer, but I think every decision we make between now and then helps us get towards that vision.
It's a pretty good vision. Mary Lou, would you add anything to that?
I think the only thing that I would add is being the director, we need the regulatory tools to implement the vision. So part of what Rosa and her team are doing is the policy work, and then we need to update the zoning for downtown, which they will do. And I think we also need mid-rise guidelines. We've got tall building guidelines, but these are all important conversations so people and council and developers understand our expectations about how buildings are going to develop and why these guidelines really matter. Our tall building guidelines say we're going to have wider sidewalks and a wider public area in front of it. So we need to translate that into the regulatory piece as well.
Listen, great discussion. I want to thank you both for joining me today. It's a very fascinating time in the history of the city of Burlington. My favorite refrain these days is there's nothing simple or easy, and you're helping, I think, people understand what's going on much better by our dialogue today. So I want to thank Mary Lou Tanner, the Director of Planning for the City of Burlington, Rosa Bustamante, the Manager of Policy for Mobility Hubs, for joining me today and talking about planning within the downtown and within the city. And I want to thank you for tuning in to Burlington Matters here on your TV. And if you have an idea for a future program, please call the Mayor's office at 905-335-7607 or email us at mayor@burlington.ca.